What's up guys, Jayztwocents here, and coming off the heels of our previous video where we talked about AIO / water cooling in general versus air coolers and whether or not water cooling is dead, we're going to go ahead and double down on the water cooling conversation where we now compare AIOs to full custom open loops in 2021. We talked about how things are changing, the efficiency of power draw and heat and all that is not the same as it was the last time I did this video years ago. So we're going to go ahead and update this video with some of the latest information. Today's video is sponsored by DataCamp, the online platform making it easy to build data skills. Acquire skills faster with over 350 courses and interactive learning experiences. Curated courses include many popular sciences like SQL, Python, and machine learning, and provide easy to follow tracks so you can learn at your own pace. Combine video classes with practical exercises and skills assessments. Take a free assessment and receive personalized learning recommendations to get you started on your learning adventure. So start investing in yourself by using my link in the description below and check out the first chapter of any course for free. All right, so first things first, let's go ahead and start off with the clinical difference. I don't know why I say clinical or quotes, but difference between a closed loop or an AIO versus an open loop or a custom loop. The difference here is that the AIO comes pre-assembled. It's filled, it's got the fans that comes with it, the radiator is attached, the block's attached, and 99% of the time it's non-expandable. It is what it is. In fact, half the time you can't even refill them when they start to lose fluid due to permeation. It's like an air cooler. It is what it is. You put it on, you don't really mess with it. Whereas open coolers give you a lot more flexibility in terms of the parts you want to use, the sizes you want to use, the colors you want to use, the materials you want to use, and it's just kind of an endless sea of parts because it's way more popular than it was even the last time I did this video years ago. Because as water cooling has become way more mainstream and way more popular, a lot of brands have gotten in on it. We've got extra brands. So back then we had like EK, Primo Chill, and then like Bits Power and a couple other ones that sort of, and Alpha Cool obviously, which sort of had the market totally cornered. But now we've got Bike Ski, we've got Corsair, we've got obviously Singularity Computers, which are very boutique high-end type stuff. We've got all sorts of brands and everything in between, including all of the like China knockoffs and the real things. And it's just, people email me all the time, completely confused as to how to put together a custom loop. So today I figure we'll just give you some information about whether or not you even want to bother with any of this. So I talked about with AIOs that you can't really expand them. And one of the major benefits to open loops is the fact that you can customize it, change it, upgrade it, expand upon it as your system increases. So AIOs are designed for your CPU cooler 99% of the time. There are companies like NZXT which came up with a bracket. I don't know if it still even works on modern graphics cards, but for like 20 series and 10 series, at a bracket that would mount to your graphics card, and you could take a CPU cooler, mount it onto that, and then water cool your GPU using a standard AIO. Obviously, there are graphics cards now that come with AIOs pre-installed. Those are typically the extremely high-end, like overclocking cards, like the Kingpin cards. I think the Galax cards, even the Hall of Fame cards, I think are water-cooled now. Gigabyte, MSI, they all have water-cooled versions of their cards because graphics cards are the single hottest component in your system, even hotter than CPUs, and so water cooling obviously had a huge benefit to them. But the downside about that is that you have a separate AIO for your CPU and then a separate AIO for your graphics card. You get tubes going everywhere that look like intestine. They're all squiggly. It's whether or not you can even fit them everywhere in your case. And so it just really starts to look ugly, where the benefit of an open loop is you build it specific to your system. So obviously the inclusion of graphics cards are something that you can't do on a standard AIO. And I'm not even going to talk about expandable ones because the pump itself is designed and spec'd and RPMs and all that specifically for the system that it has within it. These are pre-filled systems by using vacuum, and so all the air is out, which means the pump can immediately move the fluid because it's already full. These AIO pumps, especially Asetek style pumps, are not really designed to move fluid and air. So when you take a big pump like a D5 or a DDC or something like that, it is a lot. And I mean magnitudes, orders of magnitude more powerful than anything you'll find on any AIO. So it's capable of moving fluid and having that fluid also push any air in the system along with it. The AIOs, when you try and expand them, just don't have the oomph to be able to overcome the additional height. And I say height, that's referred to, tube length and pressure is referred to in height, or MM of H2O. Anyway, I'm not going to get into that. But when you're trying to push air and water together, these little pumps just don't have it. So if you want to then add a graphics card to an AIO, you're gonna have a heck of a time unless you have a custom vacuum puller that's able to pull fluid or create a vacuum in there and then hook fluid up to it and have it pull the fluid in through vacuum. You're never gonna get all the air out, which means you're probably always gonna have percolating sounds in there, or just kill the pump because you put an extra load on it that it's just not designed for. The nice thing about the pumps that you get with open loops, they're much more powerful, they're much more industrial. In fact, like the D5 and the Lang DDC, those are industrial pumps that have then been basically sourced and then adapted to work with computers. They were not designed for computers. They were found and then adapted to computers, which made them the perfect solution because they could handle the higher heat loads, they could handle higher temperature of fluids. They just, like I said, they already have massive amount more pressure and flow rate than anything you'll find on a DDC, which made them absolutely perfect for computers. So once you take those high pressure and high flow pumps and you turn them down to where the noises are acceptable, they will last forever, as long as they're decent brands that you Lang is a brand that's really hard to go wrong. And you just want to make sure that they're authentic D5s and DDCs from Lang that are basically just rebranded. I have some that have been going for as long as I've had this channel, 9 years, and they're still running. We even did videos showing how to tear them apart and clean them up because they are completely serviceable, which again is something you don't have over here. So that even when I thought one was dead in Skunkworks, we did a video where we tore it apart, cleaned the ceramic bearing, cleaned all the gunk out of underneath the spinning impeller, which is just floating on a magnet field. Then it was up and running again and it's still perfectly fine. But the other thing too is you can have a nice pump res combo, where this is an EK D5 pump res here, which as you can see, it's pre-threaded. You take your D5, you slap it on, you put the O-ring in there, you clamp this. You do a better job than me. You clamp it back down and then you now have eliminated 2 points of contact specifically through fittings. So you have the pump attached to it. So you don't have to go out from the reservoir into the pump and out of the pump. Saves you cost on fittings, saves you cost on anything to connect it, whether it be hard tubing or soft tubing. And it saves you a potential point of leak because I've never ever had one leak from in between the reservoir and the pump, except for the time I hooked a compressor up to it.
That's all of it. That's all. Holy sh! That's at 140 PSI. Oh! Ah!
In fact, if you guys may not even believe this, we just showed you how I exploded one apart. The fittings themselves and the threads, usually with PWM material, this is acrylic, but so it's all clear, but a PWM or acetal material is so soft and forgiving that the threads sort of bent out of the way, it popped together, and then they went right back. So I just threaded it back on and it still works. In fact, it's still the exact pump we use when we do our stupid experiments. It is not leaking. That's just how robust they are. But you can get the reservoir in different sizes too. These cylindrical reservoirs are amazing for filling. One, the entire cap comes off the top. So if you need to top it off, like I said, as long as you have access from above, you can get everything filled in there. You can get these in the short, like 100 millimeter size like this, or 200, 250, 300, 400, ones that are as tall as your entire loop, which means more volume of fluid, which does not increase your efficiency and it doesn't lower your temps at all. All it does is give you a higher thermal capacity of the fluid in your system, which means it will take a lot longer to get to max temperature. It will still reach the same max temperature, it'll just take longer to do it. On the flip side, the more fluid you have, the longer it takes for it to come back down again once you remove that load. But having a nice big cylindrical reservoir like this means that it's easier to top it off when you start to lose fluid through evaporation, which is gonna happen no matter what kind of system you use. And you can get them in different materials. Like this is full clear, like I said, acrylic. You can get it in palm acetal, which is black with the clear, black on top. Or other brands like Primo Chill even sell like reservoirs that have different colors in them with like these metal pieces here that thread on are anodized in green, yellow, black, blue, silver, gold, whatever you want to meet your aesthetic. The other thing, like I already talked about with graphics cards, is the fact that you can obviously get water blocks for just about every mainstream graphics card now, meaning that you can get the best overclocking capability, the best temperatures, the best boost clock maintenance on there, where it's going to keep its boost clocks almost indefinitely because it's going to run way cooler on water than it ever does on air, even the giant coolers, which just gives you a whole lot of extra headroom. Now, we talk about adding and expanding our systems. We've got our graphics cards, we've got our big old CPU, now you've got your radiator choices. AIOs are just now starting to get bigger. This is a 420 millimeter H170i from Corsair. This is brand new. They literally just announced it. I was actually on the live stream when we talked about this. This is the biggest AIO on the market. Now they'll probably end up at some point coming out with a 480 version, since the new 7000D from Corsair also supports 480s. And I'm only mentioning that because one of the drawbacks to open loop for the longest time was cases were big. For a long time, cases were big. A lot of people were making full custom loop or custom full tower cases, which meant you could fit 480s, or maybe 2 480s, or like the Case Labs case that Skunkworks was in, where I could fit a 480 up top and a 560 on the bottom. That's 4 140 millimeter radiators arranged side by side like this, which is a massive amount of, more than 1,000 watts of cooling dissipation through that single radiator itself, which is why I was able to run 3 graphics cards with a single radiator just because of the size of it. And it still got warm, but the clocks stayed exactly where I wanted them to. But as cases got smaller and smaller, the amount of rads that you could fit in there also got smaller, where it was like you were lucky if you could fit a 360, you were even luckier if you could fit 2 360s, or maybe a 360 and a 240. And with graphics cards getting hotter and, again, denser core counts, like RTX 3090 is up over 10,000 cores now, CUDA cores. Same thing with the 3080 Ti. That means more heat. More heat in a smaller confined area means you need to have a lot of radiator space to be able to dissipate that heat. But with cases now starting to get bigger once again, we kind of go through these waves of like SFF, full tower, SFF, full tower. We're kind of on that full tower wave again. So you could fit 420, or in this case, a 280 base radiator, no problem, which is 2 140 millimeter fans. You could go push-pull on those. You can go push-pull on AIO as well. But you can go push-pull on this, making them even more efficient with lesser RPM, which means less noise. You can scale this up. You got a single 120 here. You can put these in the rear. You can customize exactly where you want to put your radiators based on your case, whether it be 120s, 240s, 280s, 420s, 360s. You have options there. The other thing too is regarding colors. Just now are we starting to see AIOs come in white, and Corsair's really kind of been leading the charge on that. I know this sounds like a Corsair video, it's not, I swear, but Corsair offers white versions of their AIOs as well. I'm not sure if any other brands have actually done that yet. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you can get every single cooler they have available in either a white or a black. But companies like Primo Chill now, and although I don't have one on the table here, this is a Hardware Labs and this is a Corsair Rad, which looks just like a Hardware Labs for reasons. You are able to get like Primo Chill radiators in every single color they also have their fittings in. So we're talking gold, silver, black, gray, blue, green, you name it, gunmetal, in different materials like flake, polished, matte, which means that they are powder coating the outsides to give you options for an aesthetic. And it's one of the things that you can't get with an AIO. So if you're building a high-end computer, which is something like, I'm pretty sure you wouldn't be shopping for parts like this if you were building a budget PC, because you would spend as much on your water cooling as a typical budget PC, not including the crazy prices of GPUs today. You have options there which you don't have with an AIO. So another thing that you cannot do with an AIO is choose your CPU block. So what we have right here are 2 EK, this is part of their Vector series, I believe the Vector block. And so you can choose, this is a solid top that you can't see down inside. It's got this white glow ring around it. It's RGB. This is the same block here, just in clear. It's also got nickel plated on the sides, or you can go with full copper. You've got options. And just about every single water block company now are giving you options, which is kind of nice. You can have specific blocks, for instance, Threadripper, where it has a much different block requirement and cold plate design requirement than something like a standard Ryzen 9 or Ryzen 7 or Intel for that matter. Whereas AIOs, typically you can get like a Threadripper bracket, it comes with the CPU, and you can put an AIO on there, but you only get like 70% coverage of the actual die, if that, which means it's not ideal. But with a custom loop or an open loop, you can get one designed specifically for Threadripper, which is a much bigger cooler plate that will give you full coverage, giving you the best cooling for that particular CPU. So the theme there obviously is customization and options to be able to fit your particular needs. The other thing you can do with your system with a open loop that you can't do with a closed loop is you have a choice of material, not just on the blocks and the radiator and the reservoirs and all that sort of stuff, but in the way that you connect them. I don't have on the table right here soft tubing, but you can get soft tubing in black, you can get it in clear, you can get it in frosted, plasticizer, non-plasticized, vinyl. That's all going to depend on the type of coolant that you're running, and that's a whole different discussion about compatibility of materials. But we're seeing so many more materials make it onto the market now that in the beginning, we were just seeing acrylic for hard tube, or I can't remember, non-plasticized soft tubing, clear for soft tubing, and that was it. But now we've got nickel-plated brass, which you've seen me do videos on this. Glass tubing. I recently showed you guys how I just learned how to bend glass tubing. It's making me excited about doing another glass build. You've got PETG, which is actually a glycol-based plastic. You've got acrylic, which is a lot clearer than PETG, but a lot more brittle. Now we have this tube that was introduced by Corsair, which has a frosted look. And I used this tubing when we did a how to water cool a PC in 2021 video earlier this year, where it's my first time I've ever used this, and learning to bend it was an experience because it's a lot more heat resistant, where it takes a lot more heat to actually bend it. But it gives you a really cool effect with it being frosted. So again, if you're trying to build a themed system, you can do all of that, obviously, with an open loop that you can't do with a closed loop. When it comes to fittings, I didn't even put any on the table here because that's the part where you have almost too many choices. You've got so many brands now, rebrands of brands. You've got 45 degrees, 90 degrees, you've got double swivel 90s, you've got your T adapters, you've got your Y splitters, you've got your drain valves, your extensions, and it's just so many of them. It's pretty obvious. If you understand any sort of concept of plumbing, you have to connect this all together somehow, and the fittings are where that's gonna be done. The major drawback, there's two of them, to open loop versus AIO. The first one is maintenance. Maintenance. And there's things you have to take into account. Every single one of these parts on this table are different materials. We've got nickel plated. We've got, these are both actually nickel plated. You can have them in just bare copper. We've got copper radiators with possibly aluminum end tanks, which is more common in AIOs than you're gonna have in open loop. Before everyone starts freaking out about galvanic corrosion with an aluminum radiator and an AIO, they use specific fluids that's designed to not have that reaction happen in the lifespan of the system. The fluids that are in there are designed for it, which is why I'm even bringing this up, because all the different materials mean that you're gonna have to do your research on the best coolant to use that's gonna give you the best results for your particular system, especially if you have mixed metals. And what I mean by mixed metals, different grades of copper. You could have a full copper water block that's not nickel plated from Primochill, or Fantex in this instance, be a completely different compound or makeup, depending on how much zinc and other materials are in there versus the copper content, than something from, say, EK or something from, say, Corsair. And all of those are gonna have different effects on the types of fluids. That's why distilled water is still the #1 rated fluid to use, with a little bit of a antimicrobial additive in there to keep growth from happening. Because as soon as you start dealing with other chemicals and inhibitors, you can start to cause things to either accelerate or break down the nickel plating. So that's the other drawback there, is the fact that, well, I guess there's 3 drawbacks. That's all under the maintenance part, but you're gonna have to do some research there. You can't just grab whatever fluid you want and throw it in there, especially if you're running something like a PETG, because that is a chemical compound of that plastic. Putting the wrong fluid in there could actually start to melt it from the inside out. We've seen that happen before. We've seen deformations happen in tubes because of the actual chemical reaction between the fluid and the hard plastic itself. The other major drawback, way more points of leakage. You're responsible for putting it together and leak testing it and making sure you didn't cut an O-ring, or making sure that your tube isn't under too much pressure, or it's slightly too short and you're like, oh, I'll just crank the fittings down. And over time it's wanting to pull apart. As the temperature increases, that pressure increases, which means you could pop an entire pipe off. It's just, I guess, the peace of mind in knowing an AIO for the most part isn't gonna leak on you, because they do major testing on these before they're ever sent out. And I'm not saying they're leak proof. We've all seen AIOs leak, but it's a lot less likely to happen there versus your first time putting together a custom loop. But a custom loop is way more rewarding, and it's one of those risk to reward factors here, or ratios where higher risk equals greater reward. If you think it would be rewarding to have a custom open loop, then that's by far, you've already made your choice. You know which is better for you. But if you're the kind of person that's like, I just want the better cooling capability of water over air, but I don't care about any of this, then obviously an AIO would be your way to go. They both have their places in the market. One causes a lot more time sink in terms of the research behind it, making sure all the parts fit. Nothing sucks more than either getting something that doesn't fit because you thought you were ordering a 360 rad and you got a 420 because you weren't paying attention, you just saw 3 fans. It doesn't fit in your system, you have to send it back and wait, or not having enough fittings, or not having enough tubing. But to me, that's all kind of the fun of doing the custom water cooling loops. So I'm gonna be doing another custom water cooled build here in the near future in the 7000D. It's probably gonna be somewhere around my 100th water cooled system, if not more. And I still have to really think about this stuff, and I still make mistakes. I'm just fortunate that I have an inventory here because I do so much of this. So if you guys want me to take you along for the ride on that build, make sure you comment down below. And I think I'm gonna try and recreate Skunkworks again with the modern black and yellow theme, something we haven't seen too much in the recent past. But sound off in the comments below if you're running an open cooled, don't open cool, that's bad. Open loop system versus an AIO, and what's your experience been like. Thanks for watching, guys, and as always, we'll see you in the next one.